Yo, what's going on YouTube? This your boy Kamen Zero Spike back again once again. Today we have for Kamen Geats, episode 5, man. And this episode is kind of cool, and it actually got a lot of backstory on Buffer, and actually kind of finding out why he hates why all writers are his enemies, and why he hates Geats so freaking much. And we actually know what his actual job is outside of being part of the Grand Prix. And so we'll hop into it with Quinoa, who is doing his like vlogs and stuff like that again. He's basically recapping some of the stuff that's happened so far, and talking about how we've already lost 2 people, and he's worried that he might be next. So his sister walks in, and he kind of lies to her about what he was really doing, and she just figured that he maybe botched another interview. So we also see that Buffer, he's actually has a job as a construction worker, and he's talking to this guy named Toru, and Toru was basically his friend, but Toru basically told him, "Oh, you just a guy that looks like he just works to get paid, and you don't really have a dream or anything like that." And he asks Toru that, I want to create a landmark or a monument in my small town that I can be remembered for, and turns out it ends up being a flashback. It turns out it ended up being like a little flashback or something like that. And we see that Toru is actually, his crew is actually going to a house to renovate the house. But turns out this house is actually Ace's house, and Ace is filming there. So he talks to Ace, and he tells him that, "Hey, he said, you're a sight for sore eyes. I really didn't think you'd be working here, working on my house." And you see that Buffer really doesn't like Geats. He doesn't like the high and mighty attitude that Geats has. And yeah, Ace really does have like a high and mighty, I'm better than you kind of attitude, especially the way he provokes Buffer and stuff like that really ticks him off, stuff like that. So we did see that with the theme of the game for this one is pairs. Everybody has to work in pairs of 2, and we get the introduction to a new writer who is Panjack. He is basically like another palette swap to the bears, and he's basically like an orange bear. We actually see that our sheep guy does make a reference to him being like Halloween looking, and so he we don't know who he is. Apparently, our main girl basically says that, oh, he's just he's Grand Prix, like he's staff. He's a staff member just coming in to fill in for you, since we have an odd number of players right now. So the objective of this game was to basically defeat these certain type of Jamato that are able to they look like playing cards, and what they do, they basically go up to couples and separate both the couples, and take them back to their base. Basically, they kidnap couples. So the pairs are paired up. We see that Ace is with Nia-chan, and we see that Buffa is with Quinoa, and the sheep dude is with Panjack. So we ended up going. They ended up starting the game, and they ended up getting some new. I think Nia-chan ends up getting a new weapon. She gets these armed claws, and she ends up letting Geats. Well, she offers them to Geats, but he basically gives them to her. So we did see that Quinoa does end up getting the boost. Ends up getting the boost item again, but he ends up trading it to Geats to get Buffa's zombie back, because he noticed that Buffa uses zombie in Buffa uses Magnum in like a close combat type of way, when it's not supposed to be used that way. It's supposed to be used for, it's a gun mode technically, so it's supposed to be a long range kind of item. So he does end up getting the zombie back for him. He does end up getting it back for him. So Buffa's back to his main stuff, like the stuff that he loves. So we did see that they end up fighting a lot. Well, and Sheep Guy and Panjack. You see that Panjack really ain't a team player. He's super quiet, doesn't speak at all. and he ends up, you see like they end up getting the loot box, and our sheep guy, he ends up getting the ball and chain, but you see that Panjack wanted it, so he just gives Panjack the shield, and Panjack kind of doesn't really like it. But you could tell by like his later expression, his later like body movements and stuff, that he didn't like it. So they end up fighting these Jamato, and while they're fighting the Jamato, they ended up defeating them, but they end up coming back to life, and no one can seem to figure out why that keeps happening. And then when the round's over, no one gets any points. Everybody's basically stuck at 0. So we do get a little backstory of Buffa and why he hates the riders and things like that. We see that his friend Toru, that he used to work with, was a part of the Grand Prix before Buffa was but he was a regular civilian at first. And his friend Toru, he also used all the zombie stuff. So I guess that's why Buffa, prefers to use all the zombie stuff, because that's what his friend used. And we see that his friend Toru did die. And when he died, Geats was also there with some other Grand Prix members. And as he died, they did not care. They laughed and stuff like that. And you see that Toru ends up dying. And I guess that's where the hatred for Geats ended up, appearing, because Geats was there, and Geats probably most likely did not want to help, or probably was the cause of it, or something like that. So we see that since Geats and Nia-chan end up figuring out how to defeat the Jamato, they didn't tell anyone, but they ended up going into a training room where you can train up to synergies, things like that, and they actually battled against some Jamato, well, fake Jamato, just for training. So they end up getting some. They didn't show the training, but we'll see the results of their training together later on in the episode. So they end up training together, and we see that Buffa and Quinoa, Quinoa's trying to get to know Buffa and things like that, but Buffa's not having it. Buffa does not give a flying duck about all this pair up stuff and all this stuff. He just wants to be alone, and he's the one that wants to sing. He's the one that wants to take out Geats. So he ends up going to train on his own, and when he's training on his own, I'm skipping over a lot. So we end up going to round 2, where round 2 happens, and we see that everybody's still fighting these Jamato, but they're not, they're still not dying. So we see that Geats and Nia-chan, with the result of their training, they end up actually defeating a lot of the Jamato. But when they defeat the Jamato, they actually ended up dying, and they ended up getting 200 points, and they became first place. But the deal was that they have to defeat a pair of Jamato together. When they defeat a pair of Jamato together, then that's when they actually get points. So if there are 2 Jamato that have the same symbol, they have to be taken out at the same time, and through their training, they actually work in sync with each other to actually take out 2 Jamato at once. And it was pretty freaking cool. Like, the choreography and stuff like that was really cool in this episode. It wasn't too flashy, but it was also still very cool, and it wasn't super CGI, which was also dope. That little spin move that Geats does on his head, chef's kiss. But we see that since Nia-chan and Geats have basically won the first round, we see that Buffa does go off to train on his own and stuff like that. We actually see he actually talks to Geats and talks about what his wish was, and his wish was actually to crush people that are like Ace. People who think they're cocky, people who think they're better than everybody. People with Geats' type of attitude. And Geats is like, do it. What's up? Like, Geats' whole personality, man. He just feels like that. He's a cocky guy. He's like, he does have a high and mighty kind of attitude. He kind of has a god complex, it feels like. But we know that Geats has some type of deep motive or something that he's really, really trying to do, of why he's actually been in the Grand Prix for so long. We know that he's looking for someone, and we'll probably find that out way later on. But And the episode kind of ends with, the other two winning, but we actually did see that our sheep guy kind of complained about like who he teamed up with, and the guy in the white suit ends up giving him like this ticket, and this ticket will basically let him like do a reroll on like items and other things like that. And we see that this guy kind of has some motives of his own, because he's I don't think he's as dumb as he lets off. I think this dude is actually really freaking smart and conniving, and it's probably very, manipulative. I feel like he has the capacity to do that. So, but the episode ends off right there with him offering this ticket to Buffa. But yeah, man, this episode is pretty good. It gets an A in my book. The whole staff member thing, I'm wondering like what is, so he didn't want his, like, what when a staff member joins the game, like what exactly are they affected by? Because if they get killed in the game, do they die? Because they're, since they're a staff member, do they die? Do they have the same type of rules put against them as regular players? And also, when main people die, like if someone is disqualified, disqualified, you most likely not in the game at all. But when people die, stuff like that, like what happens? Because because she did say when people die in the game, like actually die, we said that only the Jamato know where these people go. So, but yeah, this staff member guy, like will we see other staff members, like when staff members just pop in, stuff like that. But yeah, this is a good episode, man. I love the choreography. I love the, having to do the whole pairing thing. I do like the little, backstory on Buffa, and hopefully we're going to get a lot of backstory on everyone. But other than that, you guys let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think about this episode. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'm going to see you guys next time. And remember, stay henshined.